All right, welcome to the Consortia Special Interest Group. So typically we have a pretty loose agenda with these things, just bring discussion topics, bugs, ask questions, that type of thing. I think we'll go ahead and there's a couple new faces here, so let's do some introductions. I'll start off. My name is Bob Bennhoff. I am the AspenCat Services Manager here in Colorado, supporting right now 132 libraries. Who wants to go next?
I think it's incumbent on you to point at somebody, Bob.
How about you, Joe?
With the Coeur d'Alene Public Library, we have about 28, 29 libraries in our system.
I'm George Williams. I'm the Next Search Catalog Coordinator at Northeast Kansas Library System, and we have 51 libraries in our system.
I'm Lauren Denny with Teamwork Libraries Consortium, and we have 23 libraries. We're an international consortium.
I'm Jason Robb. I'm the Seek and Find Coordinator in Southeast Kansas, and we have 48, number 49 is coming up on Monday.
I'm Jana Prock, and I am with the MetroShare in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And we have 7, which seems to be the lowest number, but we're strong.
I'm Noah Brubaker. I'm with PALNI, the Private Academic Library Network of Indiana, and we have 23 academic libraries. George, thanks for your map. It's helpful to see all the different acronyms up there because I've seen many of those in the past several meetings I've been at. So it's nice to see kind of visually where everyone is.
Well, this is just Kansas, but
Yeah.
I'm in the green portion. Jason
Yes.
is down there. So
Got it. Okay. And then Bob, I don't know if you know George Makovic or Rose Nelson at
Yeah,
Colorado Alliance.
I just know them both very well.
Okay, I was just at a conference earlier this week and I was talking to them. So I just thought maybe I'd note that little Colorado connection there.
Yeah, we're actually working on integrating to Prospector, which is the statewide interlibrary loan system, and that uses InReach, which is a III thing. So product. So there's actually a plugin ILL module in Koha that's available that is configured to work with that. And so we've been going through and doing testing. We have libraries borrowing on that, but we haven't started lending yet. But that's the next step with our kind of pilot group of 5 libraries. But pretty soon we'll be connected to all that resource sharing statewide, which is fantastic because there's some large public libraries, but most importantly, all those university libraries that we don't have access to that type of material within our consortium. We do have some academics, but they're small community colleges. So this will be really helpful to do that. So I've been working with Rose pretty closely on that. We have a weekly meeting, so I talk to her a lot.
Okay, cool. Yeah, well, that's exciting to hear. Yeah, that's going to be a lot of resources available to you.
Oh yeah, it's collectively right now we have about 1.6 million between all our libraries, and that's going to open it up to millions more. So our average library, just to give you a sense, is about 15,000 items. So pretty small, so in really rural parts of the state. So giving them access to all that is pretty cool. So I'll start what we typically do. I mean, we can just go right to various topics and things like that. I have some interesting projects I'm working on that are related to consortial work, but for the new members or new people to this meeting, I should say, there's no particular membership here. There is koha-US membership, which you should consider. I'll pitch that, but just wondering if you have any questions, anything in particular you wanted to discuss with some of us that go to lots and lots of these meetings and think about consortial issues quite a bit. Nothing in particular? That's fine.
Yeah, well, I mean, I probably have a lot of questions. I just maybe don't even know the questions to ask quite yet. Like we're still in the process of assessing things. We're just, I guess maybe if it's okay, I can maybe give you a sense of where we're at.
Yeah,
I think I
please.
have in some of the other meetings, but just so here, I'll try to keep it brief. But we are all on the same system now. We're using OCLC's WMS currently, and we're kind of looking to consider migrating to something in the future. We just don't know what it is yet. So right now, I'm kind of spending my time attending some of these koha meetings to learn more. To determine like, is koha really going to work for us, and that sort of thing. And we're also looking at Evergreen as a potential option, and then Folio as well. So the hope is that we can set up some test instances of these ILSs to give people a chance to kind of take a look at it and see what they think might work for them. And we have an instance of koha up and running now, so that was very easy to do. And we've been it took a lot longer to get our Folio instance up and running as compared to koha, but we still don't. We haven't started to look at, okay, we've just got the box set up going. We have one instance in there, but in terms of even understanding like what the consortial options are for koha,
Gotcha.
is that all just in the doc? I'll admit I haven't dug into it, but is all of that just in the documentation, or are there like things that you could provide insights on in terms of like, I don't know, things to consider, like should we run for us 24 individual instances of koha and try to connect them together in some way, or is it more effective to try to run them all kind of in one one installation?
Good question. As far as documentation, the koha manual does have a lot of information, but there's so many aspects to koha that I think don't get documented as well, that the answer to that, at least from my experience, is a little yes and no. Like there is a lot of stuff, but koha is a really flexible piece of software, and it changes a lot. So there's just a lot of little nicks and crannies in there that I think are unexplored. As far as your specific question about whether to go together or not, I guess are you planning on doing resource sharing amongst each other?
So yes, I guess is the short answer. Right now we have like a system, and I think the equivalent exists in koha, where in our WMS system, we can effectively place holds on each other's items. So it's more of like a circulation than an ILL. And so that's kind of what we're hoping to retain, if possible, is some way of doing that.
Yeah, I think for I can speak for some, at least for a few of us here, we do that, and it's nice to have it where you can just easily find an item where the patron may not even think, oh, like this is at some other library. They just see it, they request it, and it shows up, and it's pretty seamless. You don't have to create an ILL or anything like that. If you were going to set them up on individual branches, there is a koha ILL plugin that is a little different than the plugin that I was talking about that's designed for InReach. And it is very not developed. So you would probably need to make workflows work potentially. You might need to put some development into that, because it's pretty raw. And I don't know. I think it would just make way more sense to be a single group. And there's our to my detriment, often we allow a lot of customization and like circ rules and things like that in our libraries. So it's very doable. You can have people have wildly different circ rules and it still works. So if that's a concern, koha is flexible in that way. It just makes it more of an administrative challenge.
Okay. Thank you.
I would say I can't think of anybody in a consortium that has separate catalogs for each using koha. I can't think of anybody that's doing it that way.
Okay. And do you have is the patron database shared as well? How's that?
Yeah, ours is.
Ours isn't. So you can do it either way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, and then do you I'll ask one last question, and I'll let other people speak. But are there limitations on like do you run into problems in terms of like bibliographic record sizes at your institutions, or is there not really a problem with that?
No.
Well, so it sounds like you might self-host is what it sounds like. You might.
We're trying to decide what to do. I actually was at this conference. I also spoke with Donna Bacon at Mobius, and they also do hosting for koha and I think Evergreen too. Okay. And so I've been trying to map out like what all of our options are. We don't really want to ultimately we don't really want to host it if we don't have to. We're not doing that now. We kind of don't want to get into that business. But what we're trying to determine is like, is it cheaper to host it on our servers, I guess, but let somebody else just take care of everything. So we're just trying to weigh that and what's the best model to go with.
Yeah, Lauren is unsupported, but Christopher, Jason, George, and I all use Bywater. I don't know about you, Jenna. Are you hosted?
Yes, we are. And I will mention one thing that we've had two, well, actually one evergreen library join the koha and consortium. And I do not have any experience with evergreen, so I really can't speak on that. But I think it's interesting that they went from evergreen to koha. And we have another one that is considering doing that. They're going to meet with us next month.
Okay, that's good.
And I want to say that Flow, the Fenway Library organization, has a slightly different setup where they're doing more of their own hosting, but they still have Bywater for support.
Yeah,
It
Jason.
seems like you've reached out to them.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I talked to Joe Sikowitz there, I think is his name. And that's what sort of got me on that track. Was I didn't know that was an option, but that's what he said they were doing, is they installed it all like on their boxes, but Bywater, I think, just does everything literally for them. There's just the software is just on their servers.
And I believe that I haven't seen Joel Sass in a long time from Plum Creek, but I believe that's the way that they were doing it also, is they had their server, but Bywater was doing some, but not all of the work for them. Joel was doing a lot of it himself, but I haven't seen Joel at one of these meetings in a couple of years, maybe before Colorado.
Okay, because the issue that we're running into with Bywater is their pricing model is based, it seems like, heavily around the actual number of bib records. And that's sort of a problem for us, because a lot of our institutions have a lot of bib records, but they have extremely low circulation. So it's, for some institutions it's great, it's fine, but for others it's really like working against them in terms of even the pricing compared to OCLC. So it's just, we're trying to figure out some way to make it so that people do get some kind of a price break, moving and making this whole migration worthwhile.
And those are mostly physical items you have?
Unfortunately, yeah. We looked at we got two different quotes for some of, to get a sense, and so we had sent over ones that included e items and then ones that are just physical, because a lot of these institutions still have they have just like a commercial discovery layer that they intend to keep, and they can just handle all the electronic that way, and they don't need it necessarily in the catalog.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, so thank you. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
We tried that too, and it still comes out to be pretty high in some cases.
Yeah, for us, go ahead, Jenna, please.
If you haven't had a chance to weed, that would be a great time to do that. We had a lot of major weeding projects going on before we joined Bywater.
Okay, thank you.
And that got the price down a little bit.
Yeah, it would help. I mean, if we did it, in aggregate, it would help. Yeah.
Yeah, for us, we really have to be supported and have them host our data, just because we don't have a large staff. So there's just no way to, just the cost of bringing on somebody just to administer a server alone would all of a sudden put us in a, that right there is like more than what we pay Bywater. So that's kind of the situation we're in. So we definitely need that that sort of thing. I still am amazed how maybe Lauren can speak to how she makes it work.
We live without a lot of stuff. I attend a lot of koha-US meetings. We wait for the big supporters to migrate all of their instances to an upgrade, so that all of their people work out all the bugs before we install an instance. we're late adopters, I guess.
So Lauren, do you run into any issues? Like one of the concerns that we've had is just about like security of the servers and that sort of thing, because we, like we have people that were able to set up and, get Koha installed, and we've been experimenting with migrating records into there. But when we contemplated, like, can we really host this for the institutions? There was a lot of concern about, how, we have to sort of become security experts in just maintaining a server. So I don't know I don't know, how do you handle that?
I don't. Someone on our team does the security, and we have some very strict security, and we even use the hidden feature for a lot. Some of our libraries use that, not all, but some. So Koha has met all of our security needs, and even like the whole idea of hiding some collections that are specific to users.
Okay. Thank you.
We're like, is it worth paying someone to make this where it's collection patron specific?
I guess the question I would ask you, Lauren, is do you guys have like a machine in your offices, or are you hosting it virtually? Is it like in Rackspace or Amazon Web Services?
It's virtual.
Okay. And that's with Bywater, they don't have machines in an office somewhere they host our server on Rackspace. So.
Okay. Yeah, it's either Amazon or DigitalOcean. I remember.
Yeah, ours is in DigitalOcean actually. Yeah.
I don't remember which one.
Okay. But you have staff that are like ILS maintainers, basically, right? Is that what you're saying? Like you have people that are
one person who does the back end, and I do the front end.
Oh, okay. All right.
Because like kind of the consultant for librarians. And I do not handle any of the back end. I have absolutely no idea. I don't understand what it means. I'm very thankful someone else does that job, because if it relied on me, we would be hiring Bywater.
Right. Well, and that's what we feel like we would have to do, like to actually do this here. Because like Bob, I think we don't have any people who do this. We have some who are able to do some development work for us like quarter time. So we've done like a few things like that, but it's using OCLC's APIs. It's not like maintaining the thing itself. And so Lauren, I think like collectively we kind of all work together to do the front end support, like just as a group, but we don't have people, and there's only 4 of us here. And none of us are ILS trained or being able to maintain servers, that sort of thing. So like we would have to, like Bob, hire someone, I think, if we really wanted to do it. And that's just, again, it makes the cost way out for each.
Yeah, and a lot of our libraries are smaller, which is probably why we're nearing we're probably gonna have to go supported soon. As we grow and as we gain larger libraries, I think we're about to max out our ability to do unsupported. But until that happens, or we get more money, we're kind of stuck with unsupported. But the community's helped greatly. And we don't do any of the fancy plugins, and I mean it's just a straight instance of Koha, which is probably also how we're able to maintain what we have.
We have we migrated from Polaris with a consortium with Fort Worth, and Fort Worth is not partnering with libraries, so we moved over to form our own consortium, and we did choose Bywater, but we got a state grant from the Texas State Library. So you might look to see if your state library happens to have any help there. And that helped us to go on with Bywater. And I think Bywater really did help make things go smoothly. I mean, it wasn't perfect, but I don't think you can find perfect.
No, I've been around long enough to go through a couple of these, and I don't think they can go perfect.
Yeah, the grass is always greener on the on somebody else's ILS till you actually get there.
Well, any other questions we can answer for you before we just start
No,
talking
that's
about various issues?
no, that's great. I mean, hearing about, I think maybe some of the issues and like, you know, how you all handle some of those would really be useful
Okay.
for me personally. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody have any particular things they wanted to discuss today? Any bugs or anything like that? I have one exciting bug. Let me grab it. This is, does anybody use auto renew? Some of ours
Not at the
do.
moment. We're talking about turning it on for a test at a couple libraries.
Well, don't do the
Yeah.
digest yet until this bug is taken care of, because what happens is if it won't renew, it sends the patron an email daily. So that just says,
That's just
hey,
an easy way to get your items back. If you
you still
pester
can't
them.
renew. Guess what? You still can't renew just every single day. So that's that bug. So I have not commented on it yet. I will be doing that today. No, one of the ways that the community works through things is we comment on bugs and do things like that and try to get attention. If there are people that actually know how to code and stuff, they see that and they that helps prioritize where bug fixes come in and new developments and things like that. In this case, this is something that's not working correctly. That seems like we just need to make a bigger case that this is a huge issue. As I was scrolling through the text of the bug, a couple people from Bywater are saying it's an issue, but some of the people that they're hoping to do some work on it aren't as motivated yet. So I will try to rally people if they're using auto renew to do that.
So
This
Bob,
process-
oh, sorry. Go
No,
ahead.
go ahead.
Do you use auto renew at all of your branches? Is it totally on, or do you have it?
We
branch-specific?
don't have a single thing that all of our branches do. So there's not any through line. No, we have a mix of branches that do that, and generally they've liked it. When we turned it on, I remember it was Jesse Zero from Bywater said, like, everybody we've ever had turn it on just never asked to have it turned off, and that's been true for us as well. Once we turned it on, it's been like patrons seem to like it. There's been some changes since we turned it on. Before, it wouldn't let you renew it manually if auto renew was set, but they've built in a way where you can do that since then. And that wasn't even that big of a deal. It just freaked out some library staff who are used to having that control where they can hit, where they want to be the ones to make that renewal because that's what they're used to. So even before that got fixed, where now you can do that manually, it's still, in general, I think the patrons were big fans of not having to worry about it.
What about the libraries? Did you run into like libraries being upset that other libraries were doing it, that sort of thing?
No, I mean, the way we have things set up is the circ rules that are followed are always the where the item is checked out. So if it's delivered from another library, it's following the circ rule. So that way it's the patron experience is consistent. We had done it the other way for a while, and that was confusing for not just auto renewal, but different
pure
checkout
hell.
lengths. What was that, George?
It's pure hell.
Yeah, it
for the
wasn't great.
patrons.
Yeah.
We don't do that here in Kansas, but that was the way it was at the library I was at in Idaho.
Yeah, I think the only drawback we have potentially with doing it the home circ rules is like some schools have like faculty have like lots of or like a really extended checkout period and things like that. So they would get that with borrowed items. So we just kind of ask if libraries are if that sort of borrowing is happening, they just kind of keep more of an eye on it. So just items aren't like gone from their home library for like 3 months, that sort of thing. And if anybody's like, we want to give people 12 renewals, I'll say, well, if you're resource sharing, that's probably, let's go 4 or under, something more reasonable. So that's really been the only drawback, but that's been pretty manageable.
The idea I heard somebody say is if you want your circulation numbers to go up, items check out for a day
Yeah.
with unlimited auto renewals. Then
Yeah, it will.
Your numbers they'll just skyrocket.
Yeah, we'll juice that. I mean, even if you don't do unlimited, it still does juice it a bit. You're just getting more circs.
This enhancement, or this, I guess, bug process is very similar to the one that we're involved with right now. So there actually is a little difference there. I was going to ask you just a quick sort of adjacent question to this. When these communications come out, do they come from the library that lent the item or from the patron's home library?
It's from where the item is checked out.
Okay. We've been advocating to try to get it to come from the patron's home library, because in our case, like there's a sort of standard messaging that they follow, process to contact the library, because it might say contact the library, whatever type of thing, or, return this to this place. And so we've been having a lot of, so we've had to sort of standardize across all of the institutions, like here's how your messages should look to reduce confusion for people.
Well, that's the easier way. If you can get standardization, then you don't really have to worry about that. But it's possible there might be a system setting in there where you could have notices come from.
Well, we're finding that it's like, well, I mean, from the consortium's point of view, I guess we're finding that it's nice if we can just say, everyone, just do it this way.
That's always been my dream.
Yeah, we're getting there. I mean, and it's very hard, like on the academic side. Everyone has very rigid processes, but we're starting to see, I think over time now, they're a little more relaxing on some of that a little bit. Like we've been able to get some common loan periods and things across the group, for example, which is awesome. So we can, have, all the patrons then know, okay, if I request it, I get it for this amount of, this amount of days if it comes from any of our, member institutions. So we're getting there. I think there's, we're starting to be able to see, oh, there is some benefit to this. Like the uniqueness actually makes it more challenging from the patron point of view sometimes.
One thing I would say, Bob mentioned that there might be a way to change which institution is sending. Koha used to send the messages, used to all come from the patron's home library. And that was a change that was implemented at the request of many of the libraries. It seems like it wouldn't have been a bad idea at that point. You could have put a switch in so that you could say they either come from one or the other. But that was never done. It was that's something that the Koha community, when you do request a change to a feature, it's nice to be able to say, could we have a lot of times what happens is somebody will say, I want it to be different. And then a developer writes a patch that makes it different. And then other people will start saying, I want it to be the way it used to be. And so it's better when requesting changes to say, could we have a switch? Could we make it this way or this way? Could we have some kind of system preference where we can toggle how it works? One of the examples of that is in Koha, you can have 3 different options for how the circ rules work. The circ rules can follow the borrower. So and a lot of libraries, I guess, in Asia do this, where you get your card at library A, and no matter where you go, the items you check out follow the rules of library A. And then there's the, which is very uncommon in the United States. But then there's the way that we're doing it, where the library gets to library A and then it follows library A's rules. And when the item goes to library B, it follows library B's rules. And then the way that we did it when I was in the ValNet Consortium in Idaho is that the item gets to library A and it follows the rules where the item came from. So when I worked at the Moscow Public Library in Idaho, you could have a patron that could check out 5 books and each one of them would have a different due date. Because the library I was at, there were 3-week checkouts. One of the other libraries, it was 2 weeks. One of the other libraries, it was 4 weeks. One of the libraries, it was 31 days. And so every item could be different. Even though they're all books, they could each have a different due date. And so I like having that kind of flexibility when there's switches that you can say that they're either going to work this way or that way. But a lot of times in Koha, there's still some things that are left over. And if you don't ask for those kinds of changes when you ask for development, you end up with people saying, well, I like the way it is now, and other people saying, well, I like the way it used to be. So.
Yeah, the one thing I would recommend, and I won't go through all my spiel of my nightmare dealing with holds and hold transfers yet again in this meeting, but having at least that agreed upon, that because we have some libraries that don't want to lend their DVDs, and so we have to fairly make it so they can't borrow them, because the patrons won't respect, won't know that the library is not lending DVDs and then opt to not borrow somebody else's DVDs. So we have to enforce that, and that just has created a very difficult and untenable way of, well, I would say barely tenable, I guess, way of managing holds that I have to do. The rest of the stuff is annoying, but this actually requires a lot of work on my end, and it still is fairly ineffective. It leads to me running a report regularly, which I find libraries that have requested items from a library that isn't lending that particular item or doesn't resource share, but they've set their pickup location for their patron to be at that library, which obviously will not work, because if it's like some little school on the other side of the state, a public library patron will never be able to go there and pick up their holds. So I then have to cancel those holds and tell people there's a whole message that we have set up to pop up on your screen that says, don't do this. Please read it and don't do it.
If we get further along in our assessments of this, is it okay to reach out to you, Bob, about that?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, because that's interesting, and that may have some implications for us.
Yeah, if you can just figure out, I mean, even if you can be broad on some item types, like that might be one way to do it. There's some ways around it. We're just too far down the line of everybody getting to do whatever they want to do, that there's no way to enforce, like telling people you have to do this. It's just, it wasn't set up that way, and it's just never going to be that way.
Jason has a sharks and fish method that.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, I was gonna ask Bob, have you tried like a dual item type setup for your DVDs? So like have the item types at the non-shared library marked as non-shared.
You know what? That's a pretty good idea.
Because that's basically how my sharks and fishes work.
Yeah, so setting up like a non-lending DVD option. You know what? I'm going to try that. Because then we can set those circ rules across the board.
Right, and then toggle it on and off on the sharing kind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is a really good idea.
Yeah, that's one way that I've seen libraries deal with it, is that there's like library A book for an item type for all the books at library A, and library B has a library B book item type, so that each institution, the issue there is that you end up with all those different item types, but then it gives you a lot more granular control.
We already have 1 million item types, so
Yeah.
it's not that. Yeah,
What's
no, I
one
can see
more?
that. Well, we could call it like local DVD, and then, yeah, I think that could be that could help. I will explore that when I get a chance, but I think that might actually do it, because if you have that's a good example of what I was saying now, because if you then can mark in it doesn't matter whether you're looking at the items library or the patrons library. If everybody has a rule that, a rule in there that says we don't lend this, whether or not they have the item, it doesn't matter which way you point to, that would prevent it from going out. And then I would not have to do some of the stuff I've been trying to manage it with. So I just may try that.
The downside of all that is you end up with like 5 bazillion lines in your circulation rules.
we're used to that. Ours are pretty long. They're pretty long. But what I was going to ask you is, in our case, I think the way we're doing it is by shelving location. Is that like an option or not?
So sort rules and hold rules are all derived from either item type or borrower type, or a combination of both.
Okay.
Not
Okay.
of shelving location.
Okay, so that's why.
It's a three-part. It's library, library, borrower category, and item type are the three things that define circulation rules in
Gotcha.
koha.
Okay.
There was talk recently of adding collection code into that mix, which I'm not in favor of, because then you end up with even more possible lines in the
more permutations and all that. Yeah, your matrix is already bad enough.
Yeah, you end up with the potential for hundreds of. I figured it out one time when I was doing a thing for a library that wanted to. What's the name of the company? I've already forgotten their name. Library IQ wanted a list, was doing work with one of our libraries, and they wanted a list of all of the potential circulation rules. And it's like, well, we've got 51 libraries times 43 borrower categories times 60 item types. That's the number of potential circulation rules. And I said, rather than give you that, I'm just going to give you a list of the ones that are actually in use. Which even then it was like over 1,000.
Well, thankfully for our
circulation rules.
well, thankfully for our group, most of the long lines are actually for on campus. It's like extremely complex how they have different patron types and all these things on campus. But for what we're doing with that, the holds and borrows within our group, there's just one policy for books and one policy for media, and that's it. So it's really greatly simplified in that way. And in fact, once we implemented that, a lot of institutions went back and started looking at their local rules, and they were far more restrictive than they were on the things that they had agreed to lend other places. So then we saw kind of them cleaning up, I think, and actually giving the patrons locally things for a little bit longer periods of time than they had before too. So standardization, has some other side benefits sometimes too.
Does anybody else have any bugs or developments they're thinking about, anything like that?
I have sort of one cooking in the back of my brain, and I guess it's not really totally consortial. So we're probably not going to Aspen anytime soon. So I'm curious as how the holds work with the ferberization. So like it groups things together. How does it pick where the hold actually goes?
Yeah, so this is Aspen Discovery that Jason's talking about, which is a different open source product, but it is supported also by Bywater. So there are criteria, and those can be changed for how it decides. So the first thing I think we have is the bib have a local copy that's available? And then it kind of works through a process for how it picks which one. I think one of the criteria is like which item has the most available items too. So that there's some stuff like that. But I do remember long ago going over there and suggesting some changes for how our criteria function. So I think that can be done library to library depending on what you want.
Okay. And like staff cannot make use of that functionality unless they go over to Aspen to do it, right? Like staff still have to place it normal in koha on the back end.
Yeah, well, because there's nothing on the back end that's equivalent. So what the ferberization does is it groups all these things together in a way that creates like something bigger than a bibliographic record. And there's just not an equivalent in koha. There's no capability for that. So yeah, that would be good.
The sort of the development that I've been kicking around is maybe we could bridge hold on horizontally linked records. So koha already lets you link two records together in the 775. So I'm wondering if we could like create a manual bridge on certain records for holds, just to facilitate better sharing, because we come into situations where like we'll get two different brand new large print books, but one's Thorndike and one's Gale or something like that, and the holds have to go on one or the other. And I wish that either record could fill all the holds. I don't know how possible that is, but it would be like one tiny step towards ferberizing koha manually. So that, yeah.
I guess
That's
my
just
question with Aspen would be, you know, if you have something that's been around for a long time, like Pride and Prejudice, and there's like, you know, possibly 20 different editions. What if the patron wants a specific edition? Is there
They
good
can
way
do
to-
that.
They
You
can do
can
that? Okay.
you can expand. It operates under the assumption you don't want to do that, but
Right.
there's a show editions button,
Okay.
and you just press that and it'll list everything. I think in a presentation I've done a few times, we have like 100 different records for Tom Sawyer. And so if you do the search on Koha, it's just like a morass of
Yeah.
various different editions that all these libraries have collected throughout the years. And then it just shows as one thing with multiple formats. But if you expand that out, you could pick a copy.
Yeah, I think that would be, we're talking about not in 2022, but possibly in 2023, adding Aspen.
Yeah, I really can't recommend it enough. It's a really good product. If you can pay for it just works so much better than the OPAC, and the development cycle for that is much faster than on Koha, because partially because there's less of a community. So some of the things that, you know, are not necessarily bad that slow things up, because there's like a lot of QA and stuff like that. It's more driven by one person developing it, even though it is open source. And that's changing a little bit because there's some stuff happening in Europe. PTFS Europe is getting involved. But as long as Mark, who is the person that's writing the code for it, continues to be as good as he is, it's, you know, it's kind of like it works really well, because you get like one new release a month, and sometimes there's pretty sizable improvements to things in those month-to-month releases.
I think I read a quote. David Nind at a conference said the thing he loved about Koha is it's like the community is like total anarchy with an incredibly good QA process.
Yeah,
but I think Aspen doesn't have that because the community isn't as big. The anarchy is just like a couple of people.
Yeah, I mean, there's really so this is a Viewfind based product, but it's so different than Viewfind. I wouldn't even consider, even though it's based on that, the code's so different now, you wouldn't even confuse the two. And then there's another version out there called Pica that is in Colorado, and was when this Mark Noble was working on with them in Colorado and developed it there. But since he left there, the development has is stalled out, and most of their libraries are Sierra libraries, so it's focused more on that than anything else, whereas Aspen is much more focused on interoperability with various ILSs.
Related, it's okay. I'm trying not to ask too many questions, but I really want to ask a lot of them.
Please.
Related to that, maybe a little bit. When you all are, and I think Jason's question too about the ferberization, because we had, like, early on when we were using WorldCat Discovery for us, we had issues with the ferberization. You know, it was doing crazy things, like you know, particularly with like sets of DVDs, like, you know, Star Wars series or something would all be grouped together in one thing, and then you have to do that, you know, show editions and formats to be able to actually see all of your other choices in there if you wanted something. So we, you know, they've you know, worked on that over time, and that's better now. But when you all are getting like catalog records and that sort of thing, and I think it's kind of like what Jason was saying about linking records together and all of that, like, or even if it's the same item, like, do you all have like specific sources you're getting those from, or are there like standards that you have set for people to, you know, follow this procedure when you're selecting a cataloging record, just to try to get more consistency?
Yeah, that's always a goal.
I think it really varies from consortia to consortia. When I at the consortium I worked at in Idaho, when I worked for Latah County Library, they're part of the ValNet consortium, and there was a very good cataloging group that met monthly. They had standards, they had a guidebook, and if you didn't follow the standards, it didn't matter what size library you were, they were on top of you saying, you're not doing this right. And so the catalog was very consistent. Here, it's kind of a free-for-all. The catalog, our catalog is a mess.
Okay.
Because and the records are all over the place. So it really depends on what kind of. It's something that I would say you want to try and take control of early on.
And the reason I ask this is, again, with us being on WMS right now, we're all using WorldCat as our
Yeah.
catalog, right? So there's no question about, well,
Right.
most of the time there isn't a question about what record you're going to select, because you know, a lot of them have agreed, like, well, you know, we want to go with the one that's, you know, have the most holdings, like you were saying, I think earlier, because we know we can ILL that, and you know, if everyone's choosing the same thing, it, you know, it just works better for us. But if we move off of WMS, we're thinking about rethinking, like, do libraries want to maintain their OCLC cataloging subscriptions? Well, maybe not, because a lot of them don't have the money they used to have. And if we stop doing that, then what happens? You know, it's like, well, you know, you can go out, you know, start searching for records from various sources, but it's just we have no process for that right now.
That's the issue we have, is we have a variety of sources and we have a variety of skill levels. Some of our libraries, our biggest library is in Leavenworth, Kansas, a town of about 40,000 people. They've got about close to 100,000 items. But then our smallest library is like a storefront library that's like 600 square feet, if even. And they've got one employee. They're open like 12 hours a week. And so the same person that does the cataloging is also the janitor and cleans the toilets. And so she does not have the time to do as much cataloging. And she doesn't catalog a lot because they don't have enough money to buy books. Their budget is like less than $25,000 a year to run the library. So it really is all over the place. Somebody I was talking to, they subscribe to Sky River. I don't remember who that was.
We do. That's what we do.
It might have been you.
Yeah. So that's our big. So what we have is because you could use Sky River's client and then upload items and all that, but that is more complicated than we want to make things. So we just use it through Z3950. And we do have other targets there that are free and available, but we have it defaulted where you look at Sky River first. So we train on that because usually there's going to be a good record from that source. And so that's what we train on. Our biggest issue with having bad records is when we migrate new libraries in, and we do that on a very regular basis. And so isolated libraries that haven't ever talked to somebody about how to catalog and don't have sources like Sky River, you get pretty bad results out of that. And so that's our biggest problem. So we're always trying to train people to not make mistakes, and they still do. And we have turnover, and the people coming in don't have library or cataloging experience that are then thrust into that job. So we try to train that, but that's not our biggest issue. Our biggest issue is bringing in new records where somebody who cataloged something 8 years ago didn't know what they were doing and misspelled the title and didn't put in any other information in it. So that's kind of our big face thing. So we just clean up records as much as we can. And it's just an ongoing fight, but one that we are never going to win as long as we keep on adding libraries.
Yeah, and I'll just add, like, for our workflow, we do have sort of what George was talking about, the column A, not the column B. So we have a cataloging team here that watches everything, and they'll follow up if there's problems. But we're primarily having our libraries use our list of Z targets that we've kind of curated, and we've gone through, and like, if there's on order records in the target, that one gets kicked out. If there's So we try to find the quality ones and default those on, and then we have some backup ones that are defaulted off. For the most part, we do okay. And then we here at the system office have an OCLC subscription. So we try to, I don't want to say dumb down, but we try to simplify the process as much as possible. So like if there's a record in the catalog already, they add their item to that record. If there's not, then they Z-target it. If it's not in the Z-target, they contact us and we'll pull one out of OCLC for them. So we're a little less Wild West than George is, but we do still have to kind of monitor and do cleanup and that sort of thing.
Thank
Yeah,
you all
we-
for this. That's very helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, we have OCLC2 here at the Nichols office, but there's no catalogers. There's just me.
Yeah, several years ago, we did a big audit process where we ran like some reports that pulled recently catalog items, and we kind of looked at them for every library. And then we went through and had a mandatory meeting to talk about any mistakes that were made with those libraries. And that was long enough ago that we had less libraries, and we must not have had a lot of extra projects going on that time, because we right now we just added a staff member, so now we are up to 2 3/4 FTEs. So so that's so we just don't have a lot of time to do that. So we by nature are more reactive. Perhaps in the future we'll be able to do that, but one of the things I wanted to talk about real quick, the project that I'm in the middle of is we are migrating on a separate instance of Koha for security reasons, 23 prison libraries. And so that's a real interesting project, because I can tell you from this experience, there's not an ILS that exists that's designed for the unique environment that prison libraries have. So we're having to do a lot of different things with that to make that workable. So there's a couple of developments that we have that I don't know when it'll actually get in the code, but one of the things that is definitely related to Consortia is right now anybody can change the library they're at using the set library. And we're going to have that. So there will be a system preference where you can make that so only super librarians can have that, which I think will be helpful. I don't know how often that comes up in your libraries, but in the prison libraries, it's just a huge security issue, because you have the clerks that are checking out things are also often are offenders, and being able to switch a library and then look at another patron database is a huge security issue. But I'm hoping that will help other libraries too, just reduce things, because we've always had things like, why did this check out at another branch? I was like, well, somebody must have changed the library. Did you have something, George?
I was thinking of saying it'd be good to have it as a permission.
Yeah, that's what I wanted. Well, we might work towards that.
I think it'd be a good permission. And have you already started a development like with bylaw?
Oh, it's done.
Oh, okay.
But what we did discuss that as a permission late in the game, but it wasn't what we initially talked about. So we might do some more. But they said something about having trouble conceiving of it as permission. I was like, okay, well, it makes sense as I don't know. We just need to talk more.
It makes sense as a permission. If you ever get to the point where you want to turn it into a permission, let me know, and I might be able to help out with that development.
Yeah, I'll talk
that would
with
be
them
really
now.
useful for us.
Well, we are going.
I do. The situation we have is we have some libraries that are, well, like if you look at my map, there's some libraries up there in the top corner that they're a district, and so they've got 5 branches, so they have to be able to switch from library to library. And so that would be important for them to have it as a permission.
Well, that's what we realized, is that we have some staff that switch between facilities.
Yeah.
There's a little, and I was there yesterday. So there's this campus of state prisons in Fremont County, Colorado, where there's like 8 different state prisons there. And so a lot of the people work at multiple facilities. And so having them be able to switch would be fantastic, that we could, if we could set it up on a permission. We just didn't think that through when we wrote
Yeah.
it. And Monday is when the first group of these libraries are going live. So we have to have something, but I will work on that to try to get them to make it permission based, because I do think that would be preferable. And then our other development for this go around is to set where you can set a password expiration and even have that happen automatically. And then it forces you to redo your password just to get good security for those.
Is that a system wide or is it on a patron category? Borrower
I believe it's a patron category.
Excellent.
I believe there's still some things. I'll throw some bugs in here.
Yeah, cool. I that was one I was thinking about funding now that we've got the ability to change password complexity and length on a borrower category by borrower category basis. That was going to be my next one, was going to be make the passwords expire on a borrower category by borrower category basis. So
let me get these in here. Sure, I think that first one might be, I can't remember. Yeah, there's 3 different bugs on the password one.
introduce password expiration to borrower categories. That's awesome.
And then here's the set password one, or the I think that's, yeah. I think that's all of them. So yeah, you can take a look at those, and we've been so busy working on trainings and such that we have not. We're just hoping everything works as it's supposed to come Monday. There is some last minute coding being done with some of these, because right now they're supposed to be, what happens is if you put in your password and it's expired, it will tell you that it's expired and give you a link to the OPAC. In our case, we're going to use Aspen Discovery for that. And then you go out there and then you reset it that way. But right now it just says contact your administrator, because there's still some last minute coding being worked on. Because everything gets done right around deadlines. I suppose that's why we have them.
The one other one I want to add with password management is on a borrower category by borrower category basis, be able to say you can't use any password you've used in the previous XX number of days. That's another one I want.
Yeah, I think we'd probably be, I think this prison group might be interested in that.
Yeah.
As a part of this. Yeah, it's, it's a big deal to have secure data in that environment. We've had to do a lot of stuff like strip out anything that links out to anything, or on our discovery layer, there's a lot of like cool features where you can email somebody a list or do something like that. And that is a big no-no. So
yeah, I bet.
So we've had to like hide a lot of stuff. We had to hide like which library owns what books, because we heard of a situation where somebody had been talking to somebody on the outside, and they had a drug smuggling operation where they were going to put it in it. They were going to go to the public library, put the drugs in the book. They would request that IOL, that specific copy, to get it in. So it's been interesting.
I think that's points for creativity.
Except they got caught because they did it on a recorded phone call and they talked openly about it. So they had this very creative solution to get around that, but they didn't realize that if you just call somebody up on the phone and the call that says this call may be recorded, it is actually
It's going to be recorded. Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds like something my brother would have done in prison.
Well, I
But
think
he's out
we're,
now. He's not in prison. He was never in prison in Colorado. I was in Idaho.
I think we're at our time now. So we do these every other month. If I'm looking at the schedule, it should be in May. May 26th is the next one. So hope to have another good discussion then. So thanks to everybody for attending.
Bob, on the Google Calendar, it says
I know.
10, in your announcement it said 11. So is there?
I've asked to get that changed and it just
Okay.
hasn't happened. So I assume at the next meeting I'll get that response, because in the calendar it says it in 2 spots.
Right.
It says on one, like the actual calendar says one time, and then it says below it lists times that are different. So that does need to get fixed. Yes.
Okay. But we are meeting at 11 Central.
11 Central. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll get it consistent. And if I decide to move it back an hour, that will be reflected in the calendar as well. All right. Thanks, everybody.